Maya Angelou has a great quote in the space. She says something around, you might not remember where you were or what you were doing, but you're always going to remember how you felt. That is the epitome of experience. We want to elevate how you're feeling.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. 20-Minute Leaders is a proud supporter of Make-A-Wish Israel and Tech to Peace, and is in proud collaboration with Secret Chord Ventures, J Ventures, Riverside FM, Fusion VC, Birthright Excel, J Impact, Leap, Google for Startups, and Hippo, and in media partnership with CTech. Hello and welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. This episode is all about trust, and we have two very, very special guests to talk to us about 4 factors of trust. Ashley Reichheld is a principal at Deloitte Digital, works with clients across industries to help them to reimagine their brands and experiences. She believes that building trust is the single greatest opportunity to create competitive advantage. So she created HX TrustIDTM, a groundbreaking measurement tool poised to become the gold standard for evaluating organizational performance to help companies measure, predict, and build trust with their customers, workforce, and partners. Ashley's research and compelling points of view have appeared in such outlets as Wall Street Journal, Adweek, and CMS Wire. She is the author of The 4 Factors of Trust with Amelia Dunlop. Amelia is the Chief Experience Officer at Deloitte Digital and a Principal at Deloitte LLP. Helps organizations solve their toughest problems using human equity-centered design to build empathy and trust. Amelia believes in elevating the experience for all humans, including customers, workers, and partners. She received Consulting Magazine's 2020 Top Women in Technology Award for Excellence in Innovation. She is the author of the Wall Street Journal bestseller Elevating the Human Experience, 3 Paths to Love and Worth at Work, and co-author of The 4 Factors of Trust with Ashley Reichheld. Amelia's research and thought leadership on elevating the human experience have appeared in such outlets as Wall Street Journal, Forbes, MIT Technology Review, Entrepreneur Inc., and New York Post. Amelia Dunlop, Ashley Reichheld, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Thank you so much for being here, the two of you at the same time. How are you?
Doing great. Good morning.
Awesome.
Doing great.
I'm very, very happy to have both of you here, co-authors of The 4 Factors of Trust. And we'll get into that book pretty soon. And it's very special to have both of you here at the same time, generally. The show is only with one guest, so here I have double the fun, and we get to talk a lot about building trust. And a cool part of the story, which I'm excited to hear about, and I'm very curious about, is sort of the formation of trust that was formed between the two of you, and how, and through maybe the story of the collaboration on the book. I understand that there's a lot of correlation with the actual contents of the book. And so I'd love to first hear a little bit about each of your experiences leading up to this collaboration, and then we'll get talking about trust through your friendship. So Amelia, why don't you start, and then Ashley, I'd love for you to continue.
Sure. Well, let me just introduce myself. So great to be here, Michael. Thank you for having us. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at Deloitte Digital. And I could tell you a little bit about how Ashley and I came to write this book. She and I were both part of a leadership team here that set an aspiration to elevate the human experience a number of years ago. And we realized you can't elevate anything if people don't trust you. And so that kind of began that journey. And it's also no surprise to our team members that it started out, a bit of a rocky relationship. And actually, Ashley and I had to work quite a lot on what it meant to build trust with each other. And that's a lot of what led to the writing of this book. So Ashley, do you want to jump in?
Yep. Ashley Reichheld. In Massachusetts, just west of Boston. And I've been helping clients to reimagine experiences for, the past 20 years. Amelia and I began, as she mentioned, thinking about experience. Gosh, what was that, Amelia? 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And then as we started digging in, really needed to understand how we could help companies better break down what drives or erodes trust in order to better elevate human experiences, which is how we came up with the 4 factors.
So elevating human experience, what does that really mean? Expand on that a little bit. What does that mean? It sounds awesome. I just really want to understand.
Awesome. Well, actually, it is the title of my last book, Michael. So it's Elevating the Human Experience, 3 Paths to Love and Worth at Work. But it essentially, it means we all have experiences, no matter what we do. But how can we be intentional about making them just a little bit better for your customers, your workforce, and also for your partners? And it's a passion that Ashley and I share because it's makes the kind of organizations we want to be a part of and the kind of world we want to live in.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, Maya Angelou has a great quote in the space. She says something around, you might not remember where you were or what you were doing, but you're always going to remember how you felt. That is the epitome of experience. We want to elevate how you're feeling.
Interesting. Okay, so take me into your own journey of building trust, and then we'll connect it back to ultimately the 4 factors and elevating human experience.
Well, as Amelia mentioned, I think we probably had a rocky start. We weren't. Amelia and I had a little bit of a rocky start ourselves. We, clearly thought the other one was capable and reliable, but we weren't always on the same page in terms of the other factors. I am an early morning person and love to get up and dash off emails and texts. That's not Amelia's style at all. So she was adapting partly to that. And Amelia, how would you describe adapting to my style?
Well, I think for us, it was demonstrating humanity to each other, recognizing that we were both capable leaders, but we had different styles and ways of interacting. And I think in addition to demonstrating the humanity and empathy, there's transparency, which sort of makes your kind of, your beliefs and your context more present to another, but even before they ask. And I think the combination of humanity and transparency really is what helped us kind of build, a really strong relationship. And Michael, one of the funny facts is there's a woman who's part of our marketing team told us that she's worked with many co-authors on many books. And typically by this point in the process, with the book about to launch, they're not actually talking to each other. And it's been a lot of fun that Ashley and I spent a lot of time together every day. We also wrote this book entirely on Zoom together during the pandemic, and have had a great sort of time kind of building our relationship.
I think if anything, our relationship has only strengthened, which is great.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Okay, so soon we're going to dive into the 4 factors of trust and what enabled your relationship to grow. Is there, through this experience that what I'm hearing is, and a lot of times results in a different scenario. But why is trust even something that is so meaningful for us to even be discussing? So obviously, we all agree that trust is important, but why should business leaders, innovators, entrepreneurs, really anybody consider the thinking process of creating and formation of trust to be something that they need to even engage with as a thought experiment for themselves and not take it trivially or just experimentally? Why is this something so important?
It's a great question, because I think we all know intuitively that you have to have trust, right? We haven't sat down with any executives who said, no, trust isn't important. But articulating why it matters is, I think, what helps people to understand why we need to build it. And that's because trust in and of itself is what really drives people's behavior. When you break it down on the customer side, people are 90%. If people trust a brand, they're 90% get more likely to buy it again. And 62% of those customers are going to be loyal. On the worker side, 80% of workers who highly trust their employer are motivated to work versus just 30% who aren't. And of those, 63% aren't going to be looking for other jobs. They also have longer tenure, higher satisfaction with the salary. The list goes on and on. So we know trust drives the behaviors that people want to see. We also know that trust in and of itself is super difficult to describe. When you ask somebody, do you trust me? It's really hard to answer that question. Do you trust me to what? Do you trust me to show up on time? Do you trust me to have your back? What does that actually mean? That's why we tried to break it down into the component pieces and parts that help companies to understand what drives trust, why they're trusted or not.
Mm-hmm. And you actually, you created HX TrustIDTM. Tell me about that, because from what I understand, it's a measurement tool to evaluating organizational performance in regards to building trust. How do you then more actively and proactively measure trust on a standardized scale when it's so subjective?
So we break down trust into the 4 factors that drive it. We actually did a ton of research to try to understand both what researchers have already looked at, as well as in our own research, what drives trust. And what our research told us was that there are 4 things that do. Humanity and transparency describe an organization or a brand's promise. Am I making you a good promise? Capability and reliability describe a company's or a brand's ability to deliver on that promise. Trust is built when you make and keep good promises, which is actually what the 4 factors describe.
Yeah, and Michael, I'd jump in and share back to your question around the importance of trust. Trust is really important, and you really notice it when you don't have it and when it's lost. And we also know that trust has actually been declining in the last 40 years across every institution, whether it's governments, medical professionals, businesses. So it's one of the reasons we're really passionate about this topic is we need to do a better job of building trust with each other and across different industries. And the other thing that we realized is we need a new measure of trust because the existing measures are all kind of rear view mirrors, right? They're kind of after a breakdown or a trust incident after the fact. But we as leaders wanted something that helped us predict behaviors so that we can proactively build not just trust, but the kind of experiences that make people better off.
Mm-hmm. So let's dive into these 4 factors a little bit more, and where do we see in the world these 4 factors coming into play, either positively or negatively? So I'd love to make this real for what we're actually observing in the world around us.
Amelia, do you want to take a crack at the 4 factors, and I can give some examples of where we're seeing them manifest?
Yeah, sure. So, so as Ashley already said, that the 4 factors, capability and reliability, transparency and humanity. And one of the things that we noticed is we had a hypothesis when we did our research that humanity would really matter in driving kind of customer behavior in particular. But Michael, one of the things we observed in the research was that just wasn't so. That capability and reliability really mattered. And the example we often give is you and I wouldn't go to a restaurant that didn't serve high quality food, and kind of we knew that would be so safe and not make us sick. But in our research, we're 280% more likely to go back to that restaurant if they treat us with humanity and transparency. And so that's the example of being clear with us about why our food might be late or why they might be short-staffed, bringing out that birthday candle for your kid. These are the kinds of things, both humanity and transparency, that drive the likelihood to return and kind of loyal behavior.
And when you look at the companies that are doing well, we broke these down into several archetypes. The top trusted companies, the ones that do the best, are the ones that out-deliver on all 4 factors. So not just the capability and reliability, which are kind of table stakes, they get you in the door, but who treat you with humanity and tell you what you need to know. A great example of that would be Marriott, as an example. And one of the most poignant memories I have of Marriott over the last couple of years was when Arnie Sorensen came on and made a video for employees and customers to talk about what the pandemic was going to do and how they were going to get through it. And it was as transparent as you get. He was suffering from cancer at the time and had a shaved head, and his team was worried about what that might look like or mean for the people who were watching it. And instead of communicating anxiety, it actually communicated a real level of humanity and transparency. He talked about being in this together, and that is how Marriott operates. And they're a really good example of one of the most trusted.
Amazing. From a leader's perspective, how I assume that not only these traits are ones that would elevate an organization, but it is probably also relevant for individual leaders within organizations, right? In the relationships they're forming and the way that they're succeeding as leaders in the organizations. How true is that these are also similar
Totally
traits
true. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we like is that we wanted to create something that was useful for all leaders, right? So you don't have to wait or higher ups in your organization to do something that you as an individual can kind of demonstrate these 4 factors in your organization. And then that helps kind of grow that experience for your team, for your organization, and for your customers. So Ash, do you want to talk about your personal leadership philosophy?
Sure, that's well said. Even if you can't measure trust as an organization, you can certainly aspire to live those characteristics yourself. And I try to. I actually share my leadership philosophy with my team. I try to be human, so to cultivate an inclusive practice where we demonstrate empathy and kindness. I focus on transparency. I spent the better part of a decade living in Holland, and they have a word, it's bespreekbaarheid, which basically translates to everything can and should be talked about. So I try to share with my teams what they need to know. And then, of course, you have to be capable and reliable to really do a good job. Now, Amelia actually has a practice which I think especially demonstrates humanity. Amelia, do you want to talk about your Wednesday notes?
Sure. So, Michael, in the middle of that pandemic, I found that Wednesdays were the hardest to get through. Right? You were the most days from probably ever seeing someone, another human being in person, and you had a long stretch still to go until the next weekend. And so, I started this practice of calling Wednesdays Joy Day, and writing a personal note to the entire team, sharing with gratitude what brought me joy. And and I remember in the early days, joy would be just a bag of M&Ms that I would share with my 3 kids who were also doing Zoom school in different rooms in our house, and just the delight on their faces to I remember my daughter saying, "Wait, where did you get this?" It's like, I'm an adult. I can buy candy in the middle of the day. But I shared that joy with our team, and then what they did, Michael, is they would write in their stories, and so this is where we met lots of puppies. We celebrated birthdays virtually. And just this idea that Wednesdays are joy day, to kind of bring the humanity. It also kind of reach through that divide, right? Where we're only able to connect digitally, but to share just a little extra humanity.
Incredible. So what I'd love to also take away from here, selfish request for me as hopefully an upcoming leader. What, in your opinion, your opinions, are some things that a young entrepreneur, business leader, whatever, what can we do actionably starting today to generate more trust within ourselves, within our colleagues, the people that we are leading or we are being led by? What changes do you identify can we make that are not necessarily trivial or intuitive to help elevate the experience that we're providing to the people around us?
Well, in our data, one of the factors that most companies miss is transparency. One of the definitions you might hear about trust is it's when you make yourself vulnerable for somebody. That's when you start to build trust. And it's a demonstration of trust. I'm making myself vulnerable to you and trusting you to be kind or to treat that well. We think that the way companies demonstrate vulnerability is actually by being transparent, sharing the kinds of information that you need to know in order to make a decision. I would be cautious, by the way, of saying transparency doesn't mean everything. This doesn't mean the 500-page legal brief that you need about how we're going to use your data. But it does mean sharing information in a way that's easily digestible and understandable. Amelia and I have a metaphor that we use. Amelia talked about picking restaurants that are capable and reliable, places where they have food you want to eat and you know you're going to not get food poisoning. Well, let's say you go to a farm-to-table restaurant. It's really exciting to get to know where the food comes from, who the farmer was, how he or she grows, or what their family does on the farm. You probably don't want to know, though, what animal you're eating or how that animal was processed. So relevant transparency is a pretty big one. Amelia, what would you add?
Well, I think your question is very practical, and Michael, which is what can your listener take away? And the way I think about it is when we did the research on what really drives trust and what we as leaders can do, we learned that the 4 factors are predictive of 74% of behavior, which as a social scientist, that's pretty incredible. And so what I would say is start being really intentional about how you're living the 4 factors. What are you doing to demonstrate capability, reliability in your own practice? How are you kind of bringing humanity to your teams and to your customers? And just like Ashley said, how are you doing it in a way that's transparent, in a way that's relevant? So I think we could each take something away to kind of build trust in our relationships, and then obviously start to measure and predict and act on trust at the scale of your organization.
And just to quantify what Amelia's talking about, let me make this connection. So when a company is trusted or has a high degree of humanity, customers are 280% more likely to stick with that brand during a mistake. We're actually working with an airline company right now, and I'll give you a live example of how this is playing out.
Awesome.
The summer was a pretty tough time for airlines, right? There were a ton of delays, people all coming back to traveling. For this particular airline client, when they had a customer who trusted them and that customer was delayed, we saw zero impact on their scores. However, when they had a customer that didn't trust them to begin with, and then they were delayed, we saw a negative 25% hit to their score. Basically, what you're seeing is, people who are traveling say, and they trust you, say, oh, the airline is probably doing everything it can. Delays happen. It's just the way it goes. Whereas somebody who doesn't trust is saying, okay, did your crew time out? Did you give my plane to somebody else? What's really going on here? So the trust really does drive behavior.
Wow.
No.
So many more questions that I have. It's kind of mind-boggling.
One thing I just want to add is, as you could probably tell, and I know you do as well, Michael, we care really passionately about trust, but it's not just to build it in and of itself. It is all about what it enables you to do. And one of the things we were also excited about in the research is that those companies that are most trusted outperform their peers by up to 400%. So it's actually a competitive advantage that we're really excited about.
Yeah. I mean, then it has to translate to something that you can really, be data-driven about and measure. Otherwise, in such a fast-paced world where people are racing things that aren't aligned directly with the KPIs that they're being measured for, it's hard to start a conversation around. And it sounds like, and I'm definitely excited to read myself the 4 factors. But it sounds like you've taken something that is very subjective and very sometimes feels a little bit theoretical and turned it into something that's very actionable and very, very data driven, measurable, so that people can actually see why this is something that they need to be putting a large priority on. And so I really appreciate this time that the both of you gave me, and I'm really excited to read the book and to become a better leader myself through it. And so thank you very, very much for being here. This was wonderful. Continue, helping amazing organizations be better and build better trust, elevating the human experience ultimately. And thank you very, very much.
Thanks for having us. It was a lot of fun.
Yep. Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.